Hey everyone, welcome back. Quick question before we start tonight's journey. When you think about medieval people getting high, what comes to mind? Probably drunk peasants stumbling around muddy taverns. Right, maybe some monks sneaking too much communion wine. Perhaps a rowdy feast where everyone's chugging ale from wooden tankards and singing off-key before passing out in the straw. That's what Hollywood shows us. That's what we think we know. Medieval times equals drunk people. That's it. Just alcohol. Just simple drunkenness. Just people being stupid with beer. But here's what they don't tell you in the movies or the history books. Medieval people had access to substances that would make the modern DEA lose their minds. We're talking opium, mandrake root, henbane, belladonna, also known as deadly nightshade, psychedelic mushrooms, cannabis in some regions, all completely legal, all readily available from your local herbalist, all used regularly by ordinary people. And before you think this is going to be some fun story about medieval party culture, let me stop you right there. This isn't about recreation. This isn't about people having a good time. This is about desperation. This is about pain so severe that you'd try literally anything to make it stop. This is about medicine in a time before anyone understood pharmacology, chemistry, or even basic biology. Tonight, we're talking about what getting high actually meant in medieval times. Not the sanitized version. Not the romanticized version. The real version, where getting high usually translated to desperately trying not to die from an infected tooth. This is a story about pain you can't imagine. About remedies that worked but destroyed you. About the thin line between medicine and poison when no one really understands either one. About why humans have always friendly, always sought altered states when baseline reality became unbearable. If you're new here, this is boring history for sleep. We tell the stories that textbooks skip over, the uncomfortable truths, the parts of history that were messy and complicated and human. Go ahead and hit that subscribe button if you want more of this kind of content. And drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. I love knowing there are people from Seattle to Miami, from Austin to Boston, all learning these forgotten stories together. Now, get comfortable. Adjust your pillow. Maybe turn off the lights. Tonight, you're not just hearing about medieval drug use. You're experiencing it. You're going to understand exactly why desperate people made desperate choices. And hopefully, by the end, you'll have a little more compassion for anyone who's ever been trapped by substances they thought would save them. Let's begin with your pain. You're 28 years old. You're a peasant farmer in England. The year doesn't really matter. Could be 1100. Could be 1300. Could be 1400. The pain is the same across all those centuries. And right now, you have a tooth abscess. For those of you lucky enough to have never experienced this, let me paint you a picture. There's an infection deep in your jaw, right at the root of one of your molars. The pain is constant, throbbing, radiating up through your face, down through your neck. It's a 10 out of 10 on the pain scale. Except there is no scale, because the concept doesn't exist yet. There's just pain. Unrelenting. All-consuming pain. You can't eat. Food touching that side of your mouth sends lightning bolts of agony through your skull. You can't sleep. The throbbing keeps you awake. Hour after hour. Night after night. You can't work properly. Which is a problem, because if you don't work, your family doesn't eat. In medieval times, there's no sick leave, no disability benefits, no health insurance. Just the brutal equation of work equals survival. The infection is getting worse. You can see the swelling in your reflection in the water bucket. Your face is distorted. Your jaw is hot to the touch. There's a bad taste in your mouth. Metallic and wrong. You know? On some level, that this could kill you. Tooth infections killed people all the time in medieval Europe. The infection spreads, gets into your bloodstream, becomes sepsis. You die. But even knowing that, even understanding the danger, the overwhelming thing is just the pain. Constant, grinding, exhausting. You've been dealing with this for 3 weeks now. 3 weeks of agony. 3 weeks of barely functioning. 3 weeks of your wife looking at you with increasing worry. 3 weeks of knowing something has to change. Now, in modern times, you'd go to a dentist. They'd take an X-ray. They'd prescribe antibiotics for the infection. They'd probably extract the tooth under local anesthesia. You'd take some ibuprofen for the pain afterward. Maybe a prescription painkiller for a few days if it was really bad. Within a week, you'd be fine. Problem solved. But this isn't modern times. This is medieval Europe. And your options are very dull. Very different. Let me tell you what pain means when you're a medieval peasant. It means there's no such thing as pain management as we understand it. There's no concept of a pain scale. No doctors asking you to rate your pain from 1 to 10. Pain is just part of life. A constant, expected companion. The church tells you that pain brings you closer to God. That suffering is redemptive. That Jesus suffered on the cross. So your suffering has meaning and purpose. You're supposed to offer up your pain as a prayer. You're supposed to endure it with grace and patience. You're supposed to see it as an opportunity for spiritual growth. And maybe that works for some people. Maybe some saints and mystics genuinely find meaning in their suffering. But you're not a saint. You're a farmer with an infected tooth. And the spiritual meaning of your pain is very hard to appreciate when you haven't slept in 3 days. You've tried prayer. Of course you've tried prayer. You've prayed to God. You've prayed to various saints. You've prayed to the Virgin Mary. You've lit candles you couldn't really afford. You've made promises about being a better person if only this pain would stop. None of it has worked. The tooth still throbs. The infection still spreads. The pain continues. Your wife has tried to help. She's made poultices from herbs she knows. Chamomile to reduce inflammation. Yarrow to stop any bleeding. Sage for its antiseptic properties. She's had you rinse your mouth with salt water. She's tried every home remedy passed down from her mother and grandmother. Some of them help a little. For an hour or two, the pain might dull slightly. But then it comes roaring back. Worse than before. Here's what you need to understand about medieval pain. Chronic pain was everywhere. Almost universal. Arthritis from hard physical labor starting in childhood. Back pain from bending over in fields all day. Joint pain from repetitive motions. Women dealt with menstrual pain with no understanding of what caused it or how to treat it. Childbirth happened with no pain relief whatsoever. People broke bones that healed wrong, leaving them in permanent pain. Diseases caused pain that never ended, and there was nothing for it. No aspirin, no ibuprofen, no Tylenol, no local anesthetics, no epidurals, no prescription painkillers, just pain, constant, grinding, exhausting pain, for your entire life, from childhood to death. Pain was the background noise of existence. So people looked for anything that might help. Anything that might take the edge off. Anything that might let them sleep for a few hours or work without wincing. And that's where the herbalists came in. The medieval pharmacy was very different from what we have today. There were no CVS or Walgreens on every corner. No prescription drug regulations. No FDA approval process. No pharmacists with years of education dispensing carefully measured doses. Instead, there were herbalists, sometimes called wise women or cunning folk. People, usually women, who had learned about plants from their mothers and grandmothers. They knew which plants helped with which ailments. They knew how to prepare tinctures and teas and poultices. They knew which mushrooms were safe to eat and which would kill you. Their knowledge was based on generations of trial and error. Lots of error. Fatal error, sometimes. These herbalists kept gardens where they grew medicinal plants. They dried herbs and stored them carefully. They knew the best times to harvest different plants for maximum potency. They were the closest thing medieval villages had to medical professionals. At least for common people who couldn't afford actual physicians. And they had access to some serious substances. Not just harmless chamomile tea and lavender for relaxation. Real, powerful, psychoactive drugs that worked because they actually did something to your brain chemistry. We know now, with modern science, exactly how these substances work. Medieval people didn't. They just knew that certain plants helped with pain. And when you're desperate, you don't ask too many questions about how or why. You just want the pain to stop. Let me walk you through what was available at your average medieval herbalist's shop. Think of this as the medicine cabinet from hell. First, there's opium. This is the big one. The heavy hitter. Opium comes from the poppy plant. Papaver somniferum. You score the seed pod. Collect the milky sap that oozes out. Let it dry into a sticky brown resin. That resin contains morphine and codeine, the same opioids we use in hospitals today. Medieval people didn't know the chemistry, but they definitely knew it worked. Opium had been used in Europe since ancient times. The Romans knew about it. The Greeks knew about it. The knowledge never really went away, even through the so-called Dark Ages. It was expensive, because poppies grew better in warmer climates and had to be imported. But it was available. Herbalists kept it. Physicians prescribed it. Wealthy people used it regularly. Even some peasants could afford it occasionally. For severe pain. The effects of opium are exactly what you'd expect if you know anything about modern opioid painkillers. It relieves pain remarkably well. It creates a sense of euphoria and well-being. It makes you drowsy and relaxed. It suppresses your cough reflex. So it was used for chronic coughs. It stops diarrhea. So it was used for stomach ailments. It's also incredibly addictive. But we'll get to that part later. Medieval people prepared opium in different ways. Sometimes they soaked the dried resin in wine or ale, creating a drinkable tincture. Sometimes they boiled it in water to make a tea. Sometimes they mixed it with other herbs to modify the effects. The dosing was incredibly imprecise. You're basically guessing at how much active ingredient is in your preparation. Too little, and it doesn't work. Too much, and you stop breathing. Medieval people didn't know about respiratory depression. They just knew that sometimes people took opium and didn't wake up. Then there's mandrake root. Mandrake, or mandragora, was one of the most famous and feared plants in medieval Europe. The root often grows in a shape that vaguely resembles a human figure, with a forked legs and sometimes something that looks like arms. This led to all sorts of legends. People said the mandrake screamed when you pulled it from the ground, and the scream could kill you or drive you mad. So the proper way to harvest mandrake, according to medieval lore, was to tie a dog to the plant and then call the dog from a safe distance. The dog would pull up the plant and die from the scream. But you'd be safe. Obviously, mandrake doesn't actually scream, but it is genuinely powerful and dangerous. It contains alkaloids that act as a strong sedative and anesthetic. It was used before surgery. Back when surgery meant someone holding you down while a barber surgeon sawed through your leg. A strong dose of mandrake could knock you unconscious, which was the best they could do for anesthesia. It also causes hallucinations. Vivid, often frightening hallucinations. People reported seeing demons or having visions. At lower doses, It produced a dreamy, disconnected state. You'd be aware, but not really present. It's related to plants like belladonna and henbane, all part of the nightshade family, all psychoactive, all dangerous. Speaking of henbane, that was another common option. Henbane, Hyoscyamus niger, was used for tooth pain specifically, which is relevant to our story tonight. Because remember, you've got that infected molar. Herbalists would sometimes soak henbane seeds and apply them as a poultice directly to the painful area. Or they'd brew the leaves into a tea. Henbane causes drowsiness, reduces anxiety, produces mild euphoria at low doses. At higher doses, it causes hallucinations, amnesia, and delirium. There are medieval accounts of people taking henbane and then having no memory of the next several hours. Just blank time. Gone. This was actually seen as a feature, not a bug. If you were using it before something horrible like having a tooth pulled with no anesthesia, henbane was also associated with witches, specifically with flying ointment, this legendary substance that witches supposedly rubbed on their skin before flying to sabbats. Modern historians think flying ointment was probably a mixture of henbane, belladonna, and other psychoactive plants mixed into a fat base. If you rub that on your skin, especially on areas with thin skin like your inner thighs or underarms, the active compounds would absorb into your bloodstream. You'd hallucinate. You might very well feel like you were flying. You weren't actually flying. Of course, you were just very high on a mixture of powerful psychoactive plants. But if you were a medieval peasant woman with no understanding of brain chemistry, you might genuinely believe you'd flown somewhere. Then there's belladonna itself. Deadly nightshade. The name belladonna means beautiful woman in Italian, because Italian women used it to dilate their pupils. Dilated pupils were considered attractive, a sign of sexual arousal. So they'd put a tiny drop of belladonna extract in their eyes, just enough to make the pupils huge and dark. This worked, but it also caused blurred vision and could lead to blindness if overused. Beauty is pain, apparently, even in medieval Italy. As a medicine, belladonna was used for pain, muscle spasms, and various stomach ailments. Small doses produced mild euphoria and reduced pain. Larger doses produced delirium, terrifying hallucinations, seizures, and death. The line between a medicinal dose and a fatal dose was thin, very thin. And remember, medieval people were eyeballing their doses. No precise measurements, no standardized preparations. Just add some of this plant to water and hope for the best. Alcohol deserves a mention. Even though it's so obvious, we sometimes forget about it. Medieval people drank constantly. And I mean constantly. Beer for breakfast. Beer with lunch. Beer with dinner. Beer between meals. Children drank weak beer. Monks drank beer. Everyone drank beer. This wasn't just for fun. Medieval water was often unsafe. Rivers were contaminated with waste. Wells could be tainted. But the brewing process, which involves boiling water, killed pathogens. So beer was actually safer than water in many medieval towns. The alcohol content was usually pretty low, maybe 3 to 4%. About like a modern light beer. But if you're drinking it all day every day, that adds up. Wine was more expensive, mainly for the wealthy and the church. Mead, which is fermented honey, was for special occasions. And there were stronger preparations too. People would distill alcohol to create something closer to liquor. Though widespread distillation didn't really take off until later medieval period. The point is, baseline medieval sobriety included what we'd consider a pretty steady buzz. People were mildly drunk a lot of the time. It took the edge off the grinding misery of medieval life. It probably saved lives by preventing waterborne diseases. And it was so normal that nobody really thought about it as drinking in the problematic sense. It was just what you drank. Cannabis shows up sometimes in medieval European texts, but it was rare. It grew better in warmer climates. Some returning crusaders brought knowledge of it back from the Middle East, where it was more commonly used. But it never really caught on widely in medieval Europe the way it did in other parts of the world. Some herbalists knew about it and used it for pain and nausea. But it wasn't a major player in the medieval drug scene, more of a minor character. And then there were the accidental drugs. Ergot was the big one. Ergot is a fungus that grows on rye and other grains. It looks like a dark, elongated grain kernel. If you grind up infected grain and make bread from it, everyone who eats that bread gets dosed with powerful psychoactive compounds. The same compounds that would later be synthesized into LSD. Ergot poisoning caused hallucinations, convulsions, and something called St. Anthony's fire, where your extremities would feel like they were burning and then turn black from gangrene as your blood vessels constricted. People's fingers and toes would literally fall off. It was horrifying. And it was fairly common during times when grain supplies were contaminated. There's actually a theory that the Salem witch trials were partly caused by ergot poisoning. The accused witches, mainly young girls, had symptoms consistent with ergot hallucinations. Convulsions, crawling skin sensations. They lived in a marshy area where rye grew. Perfect conditions for ergot. They blamed witchcraft. It might have been moldy bread. We'll never know for sure. But it's a fascinating and disturbing possibility. Magic mushrooms containing psilocybin grew wild in Europe. Some cultures used them ritually. But in Christian medieval Europe, there wasn't much mainstream use. Too associated with paganism. Too unpredictably. Though surely some people found them and tried them. Especially in rural areas. The knowledge existed, passed down in folklore. But it was dangerous knowledge. The wrong mushroom could kill you. And lots of mushrooms looked similar. Medieval mushroom foraging was a high-stakes game. So that's your medieval pharmacy. A mix of genuinely effective painkillers, dangerous hallucinogens, everyday alcohol, and accidental poisonings from contaminated food. No safety regulations. No quality control. No informed consent. Just desperate people and plants that might help or might kill you. And no real way to know which until you tried. Now, let's get back to you and your infected tooth. You've reached the point where you can't take it anymore. 3 weeks of agony is enough. Prayer hasn't worked. Home remedies haven't worked. The infection is getting worse. Not better. Your face is swollen. You're feverish. You're starting to genuinely worry you might die from this. So you do what desperate medieval people did. You go see Goodwife Agnes, the village herbalist. Her cottage is at the edge of the village, a little separated from the other houses. People respect her but also fear her a little. She knows things. Secret things. Plant knowledge passed down from her mother and grandmother. Some of the more superstitious villagers whisper that she might be a witch. But nobody says it too loudly, because everyone needs her help eventually. You knock on her door. She opens it, takes one look at your swollen face, and gestures you inside without a word. Her cottage is dim, the air thick with the smell of dried herbs hanging from the rafters. Bundles of plants you don't recognize. Clay pots and wooden boxes lining shelves. A fire burning low in the hearth. This is her workspace. Her pharmacy. Her inheritance of knowledge. She examines your face. Her weathered hands gentle but firm. She presses on the swelling, making you wince. She peers into your mouth, which takes some courage on your part because your breath is terrible and you know it. She makes a sound in the back of her throat. Not good. Infections, deep. She says. Her voice is matter of fact. Not unkind, but not especially sympathetic either. She's seen too much suffering to get emotional about every case. Might kill you if it spreads. Can't pull the tooth while it's this swollen. You'd bleed out or die from shock. Need to wait for the infection to calm down first. You nod. You knew this. Somehow. The tooth has to wait. But the pain, the constant, grinding pain. You can't wait for that. I need something for the pain. You manage to say, I can't. I haven't slept in days. I can't work. I can't eat. I need help. She studies you for a moment. There's something in her eyes. Recognition. Maybe. She's seen this moment before. The moment when someone crosses from suffering to desperation. When they'll try anything. Accept any risk. Just to make the pain stop. I can help, she says slowly. But you need to understand. These medicines, they work, they'll ease your pain, let you sleep, but they're powerful, and they're dangerous if you don't respect them. You nod eagerly. You'll respect them. You'll be careful. You'll do whatever she says. You just need relief. She turns to her shelves and begins gathering things. Dried poppy pods, brown and rattling with seeds. Crushed leaves of something you don't recognize. Dark green and smelling sharp. She measures them into a small cloth bag, tying it closed with string. Boil these in water. She instructs, steep it like you would tea. Drink half a cup. Wait. If the pain is still too much, drink a little more. But not the whole pot at once. You understand, not all at once. You take the bag. It's light in your hands but heavy with possibility. With hope. How much do I owe you? She names a price. It's most of what you have saved. Money you've been putting aside. Coin by coin. But what choice do you have? Pain or poverty? Life or money? It's not really a choice at all. You pay her. She nods. Satisfied. And then her expression softens slightly. Come back in 3 days. She says, we'll see about that tooth then. And if you need more medicine? She doesn't finish the sentence. Doesn't need to. You'll be back if you need more. Of course you will. Where else would you go? You walk home, clutching the cloth bag like it's treasure. Which, in a way, it's hope. It's relief. It's the promise that the pain might stop, even if just for a few hours. Your wife sees what you're carrying, and worry flashes across her face. She's heard stories. Everyone has. Stories about people who started using herbalists' remedies for pain and then couldn't stop. People who lost everything to their need for the herbs. People who died from taking too much or mixing the wrong things. But she also sees your suffering. Has been watching you suffer for weeks. So she doesn't protest. Just helps you prepare it. You boil water over the fire. Add the herbs from the cloth bag. The smell that rises with the steam is bitter. Earthy. Slightly sour. Not pleasant. But medicine isn't supposed to be pleasant. Medicine is supposed to work. You strain out the plant material and pour the dark brown liquid into a cup. It's still hot. Steaming. You blow on it to cool it slightly. And then you pause. This is the moment. The threshold. Once you drink this, something changes. You'll know what opium feels like. What henbane does to your mind. You'll know why people use these substances. Why they keep using them. You'll understand firsthand why medieval people, desperate and suffering, turn to powerful plants despite the risks. The church would say you should endure your pain. Offer it up to God. Find spiritual meaning in your suffering. But the church fathers aren't the ones with an infected tooth. They aren't the ones who haven't slept in 3 weeks. They aren't the ones watching their face swell and feeling fever creep through their body and knowing that this could be the thing that kills them. You're just a person in pain. A human being pushed past endurance, looking for relief in a world with very few options for relief. You lift the cup to your lips. The liquid is bitter, coating your tongue. You swallow. Once, twice, half the cup. Like Agnes said, you set the cup down and wait. In 20 minutes, you're going to understand exactly why medieval people used opiates, why they risked addiction, overdose, death, why they kept coming back to substances they knew were dangerous. Because when you're in that much pain, anything that makes it stop feels like a miracle, feels like salvation, feels like the only thing in the world that matters. The relief is coming. The soft edges, the warmth, the first peace you felt in weeks, it's all coming. But so is everything else. The tolerance, the dependence, the need for more, the slow transformation from medicine to necessity to trap, the realization that the thing that saved you is also the thing that's destroying you. But you don't know that yet. Right now, you're just waiting for the pain to ease, hoping that Agnes's herbs will work, desperate for relief, and they will work. That's the terrible truth. They'll work better than anything else you've ever tried. That's why you won't be able to stop. You sit there with the empty cup in your hands, the bitter taste still coating your tongue. Your wife watches you with worried eyes. You both wait. The cottage is quiet except for the crackling of the fire. Outside, the sun is setting. Inside, you're wondering if anything will happen at all. Maybe Agnes sold you expensive weeds. Maybe this won't work. Maybe nothing works. And then, slowly, you begin to feel something. It starts in your stomach. A warmth. Not unpleasant, like you've swallowed something heated, but gentler than that. The warmth spreads outward, moving through your chest, down your arm. Your fingers start to tingle, just slightly. A pins and needle sensation, but softer, almost nice. The pain in your jaw is still there. You can still feel it. That deep, throbbing ache. But something about it is different. It's like the pain is moving away from you, getting more distant, like you're watching it happen to someone else instead of experiencing it yourself. The pain exists, but you're not really in it anymore. You're separate from it somehow. This is remarkable. This is the first time in 3 weeks that the pain hasn't been the only thing you could think about. You can breathe without wincing. You can move your head without wanting to cry out. The constant tension in your shoulders, the clenching of your fists, all of it starts to ease. Your muscles relax. You didn't even realize how tightly you'd been holding yourself against the pain until now. When you're finally letting go, your wife asks you something. Her voice sounds far away, though she's sitting right next to you. You turn to look at her, and the movement is slow. Dreamlike? Everything has soft edges now. The harsh lines of pain and exhaustion and fear. All softened, blurred slightly, made bearable. It's working. You manage to say, your own voice sounds strange to your ears. Thick, slow. But you don't care because the pain, that awful grinding pain, is fading. 70% gone. Maybe 80, still there if you focus on it. But you don't have to focus on it. You can think about other things. You can just exist, without every thought being interrupted by another wave of agony. You feel your eyes filling with tears. Not from pain this time. From relief. From gratitude so intense it's almost overwhelming. For weeks, you've been trapped in a nightmare of constant suffering. And now, finally, It's easing. This simple cup of herbs that cost you most of your savings. It's giving you back something you'd almost forgotten. Peace. Simple, quiet peace. Your wife sees the tears on your face and her own eyes well up. She reaches out and takes your hand. Squeezes it. You squeeze back. For weeks, you've been too consumed by pain to really connect with her. To be present. To be a husband instead of just a suffering thing that used to be her husband. But right now, in this moment, you can feel her hand, can appreciate her presence, can remember why you married her. The mental effects are intensifying now. Your thoughts are slowing down in a way that's not frightening. Just peaceful. For weeks, your mind has been racing. Anxious thoughts looping endlessly. Will the infection kill you? Will you be able to work? What if you can't provide for your family? What if? What if? What if? Constant anxiety on top of constant pain. But now the anxiety is fading too. Everything is going to be okay. You know this with a certainty you haven't felt in weeks. The infection will heal. You'll get through this. Everything will be fine. The bone-deep terror that's been your companion for weeks. It's gone. Replaced by calm, by acceptance, by a gentle, floating confidence that things will work out. This is the danger. Though you don't know it yet. This feeling of everything's fine isn't based on reality. The infection is still there. The tooth is still rotting. Your problems haven't actually changed. But your perception of them has, and perception is powerful. Right now, drugged and relieved, you feel like a huge weight has lifted. And in a way, it has the weight of suffering, the weight of constant pain and fear. Your body feels heavy now, pleasantly heavy, like you're sinking into the wooden bench you're sitting on, like you could just melt into it and stay there forever. Movement requires effort, but you don't need to move. You can just sit, just breathe, just be. Your wife helps you to the sleeping pallet. You let her guide you. Grateful for her steadiness. You lie down and the straw mattress feels softer than you remember. Everything feels softer. The rough wool blanket isn't scratchy. The thin pillow isn't uncomfortable. Everything is gentle and right and perfect. And then, for the first time in weeks, you sleep. Not the fitful, pain-interrupted half-sleep you've been managing. Real sleep. Deep, dreamless, healing sleep. Your body finally getting the rest it's been desperate for. Your mind finally quiet. No dreams. No nightmares. No waking up every hour to the throbbing in your jaw. Just darkness. Just peace. Just sleep. Hours pass. The cottage is silent. Your wife sits up for a while, watching you, making sure you're still breathing. She's heard stories about people who took too much of Agnes's medicines and never woke up. But your breathing is steady, deep and slow, but steady. After a while, reassured, she lies down next to you and sleeps too. You wake to sunlight streaming through the gaps in the shutters. Morning. You've slept through the entire night. 8 hours. Maybe more. When was the last time you slept 8 hours straight? You can't even remember. Your body feels strange. Heavy. Sluggish. Like you're moving through water. Your mouth is incredibly dry. You're thirsty in a way that goes beyond normal thirst. Your tongue feels thick and fuzzy. There's a slight nausea in your stomach. Not terrible, but present. And you feel a little dizzy when you sit up too fast. These are side effects. The price you pay for the relief. Opiates slow down your digestive system, causing constipation. They suppress your body's natural responses. They leave you feeling hungover. In a way, cloudy, slow, not quite yourself. But the pain, the tooth still aches. The infection is still there. Maybe even a little worse. But the terror is gone. That bone-deep fear that's been eating at you for weeks. It's not there. You can think clearly for the first time in so long. Your mind isn't consumed by pain. You slept. You actually slept. That alone feels like a miracle. Your wife wakes up and looks at you with cautious hope in her eyes. How do you feel? Better. You tell her. And it's true. You feel better than you felt in weeks. Physically, you're a bit rough. But mentally, emotionally, you feel almost human again. So much better. She smiles. Relieved. But there's still worry in her expression. Agnes said to be careful with those herbs. I was careful. You say. I only drank half a cup. Just like she told me. Your wife nods but doesn't look entirely convinced. She's lived in this village her whole life. She's seen people start using Agnes's medicines. Some people use them once or twice for acute pain and then stop. But others start using them and can't seem to stop. People who were normal and functional become shadows of themselves. Always going back to Agnes. Always needing more. She's worried you'll become one of those people. But you won't. You're different. You're stronger than that. You're using this medicine for a legitimate reason. For real pain. Once the tooth is extracted and the infection heals, you won't need it anymore. You'll be fine. That's what you tell yourself. That's what everyone tells themselves at the beginning. The pain starts creeping back as the morning progresses. Not as bad as it was before the medicine, but noticeable. Present. By midday, it's demanding attention again. That deep ache spreading through your jaw. The throbbing returning. You look at the pot where you made the tea yesterday. There's still half of it left. Agnes said to drink more if the pain continued. The pain is definitely continuing. You followed her instructions perfectly. Drank half a cup. Waited. Now you need more. That's just responsible medicine use. You drink another half cup in the afternoon. The relief comes faster this time. You're learning what to expect. The warmth, the tingling, the distancing from pain. It's familiar now. Still wonderful. But familiar. Within an hour, you're functional again. You can actually do some work around the cottage. Small repairs you've been putting off. Your wife looks pleased to see you moving around. Being productive. That evening, you consider taking more. The pain isn't too bad right now. But you know it will get worse at night. It always gets worse at night. Wouldn't it be smart to take the medicine now? Before the pain becomes unbearable. Preventive medicine. In a way, you drink the rest of the tea before bed. Sleep comes easily again. Deep and dreamless. Your body craves this rest. Needs it to heal. 3 days pass. 3 days of manageable pain instead of agony. 3 days of actual sleep. 3 days of feeling almost normal. But the cloth bag of herbs is empty now. Used up. And the pain is still there because the infection is still there. The tooth is still rotting in your jaw. You return to Agnes's cottage as instructed. She examines your face. The swelling has gone down a little. Not enough to safely extract the tooth. But improvement. The herbs probably helped with the inflammation. Plants like opium poppy and henbane have actual anti-inflammatory properties. Medieval people didn't understand the mechanism, but they observed the results. Another few days. Agnes says, then we can take out the tooth. But you'll need to manage the pain until then. You nod. You'd expected this. You need more herbs. More medicine. Just to get you through until the extraction. Just a little longer. She prepares another bag for you. Same mixture as before. Same price? You pay without hesitation. What else are you going to do? Go back to that unbearable pain? You can't. You've remembered what it's like to function, to sleep, to think. You can't go back to the nightmare of constant agony. Agnes hands you the bag and repeats her warning. Be careful with this. Don't use more than you need. It's easy to need too much. You assure her you'll be careful. You're being responsible about this. Following instructions. Using medicine as directed. You're not like those people who lose control. You're managing a medical condition. Over the next week, you establish a routine. Morning dose. Evening dose. Sometimes a midday dose if the pain breaks through. You're using more than you did the first day. But that's to be expected. Your body is getting used to the medicine, building tolerance, though you don't have that word for it. You just know that you need a little more now to get the same relief. The tooth finally gets extracted. The barber surgeon comes to your cottage with his pliers. You take a large dose of the herbs beforehand. Agnes gives you some additional henbane to chew, to help with the pain and anxiety. The procedure is still horrible. The barber surgeon is skilled. But there's only so much you can do when you're pulling a rotting tooth out of an infected jaw with no anesthesia beyond plant medicines. You feel everything. The pressure, the cracking sound, the awful tearing sensation, the rush of blood and pus, but you're distant from it. The drugs keep you from fully connecting with the experience. You're aware it's happening. You don't like it, but you don't fight or scream. You just endure. Afterward, bleeding heavily, jaw throbbing worse than ever. You take more herbs. The pain is intense, legitimate. No one would blame you for medicating. You need it. The socket slowly heals over the following weeks. The infection finally clears. Your face returns to its normal shape. The constant pain that's dominated your life for over a month finally ends. But you're still taking the herbs. Because your back hurts. It always has. Honestly, farm work is brutal on your back. Bending over in the fields all day. Lifting heavy loads. Everyone's back hurts. That's just part of life. But now you have medicine that helps with that pain. Why wouldn't you use it? When you try to skip the evening dose, you lie awake for hours. Your mind races. Anxiety floods back. Your legs feel restless. Your body aches. But if you take the herbs, you sleep fine. So obviously you should keep taking them. And the herbs help you get through the workday. Take away the edge of constant physical discomfort. Make the endless labor more bearable. You're actually more productive when you use them. So really, using the herbs is the responsible choice. For your family, for your ability to work and provide, these are all lies your brain is telling you. Rationalizations. But you don't know that. You genuinely believe you're making reasonable choices about pain management. What you don't realize yet is that you're not using the herbs for pain anymore. You're using them to avoid withdrawal. Your body has become physically dependent. When you don't take the herbs, you feel terrible. Not because of your back or your tooth. Because your brain chemistry has been altered. Your body has stopped producing natural endorphins. It's relying on the external opiates to function normally. When you take the herbs now, you don't feel high. You don't feel euphoric. You just feel normal. Baseline. The way you used to feel before any of this started. You're dosing just to feel not sick. But you don't understand that. You think you still have pain that needs treating. You think you're managing a medical condition. One evening, you're at the tavern. You needed to get out of the cottage. Away from your wife's worried looks. You order an ale. The tavern is crowded. Warm with body heat and loud with conversation. Working men drinking after a long day of labor. This is the social center of village life. The man next to you is Thomas. A carpenter. You've known him for years. Good man. Skilled with his hands. He sees you wince slightly as you shift position on the bench. Your back is aching. The morning dose has worn off. You're waiting until you get home to take the evening dose. Trying to stretch out your supply. Back pain? Thomas asks. You nod. He glances around to make sure no one's paying attention. Then reaches into his tunic and pulls out a small flask. Try mixing it with ale. Works faster. You know what's in that flask without asking. The same herbs you've been using. Or something similar. Thomas has his own chronic pain. A back injury from a construction accident years ago. He's managed it with herbs and drink for a long time. He's functional. Works every day. Supports his family. He's not falling down drunk or useless. He's just managing. He pours a little from his flask into your ale. The liquid swirls, darkening the beer. You drink. He's right. Mixed with alcohol. The herbs hit faster. Within minutes, you feel the relief washing over you. The pain receding. The tension easing. See, Thomas grins. Makes the evenings more bearable. You talk for a while. He tells you about other people who use Agnes's medicines. Margaret, the widow 3 houses down, uses herbs for insomnia and grief after her husband died last winter. Robert, who came back from fighting in the King's Wars with injuries that never properly healed. At least a dozen people in the village. Probably more who keep it quiet. All using various plant preparations to manage various forms of suffering. This is normal. This is just part of medieval life. Pain is constant. Effective medicine is rare. So people use what works. Everyone does it. You're not doing anything wrong or shameful. You're part of a community of people managing the brutal realities of medieval existence with the limited tools available. Over the following weeks, you get to know these people better. The informal network of herb users. You trade tips. Margaret tells you that henbane works better for sleep. Robert swears by mixing poppy with alcohol for his war injuries. Thomas warns you away from mandrake unless you absolutely need it. Says the visions aren't worth the risk. This is peer-to-peer medicine. Shared knowledge among sufferers. In the absence of real medical care, people help each other, support each other, understand each other in ways that people who don't deal with chronic pain never quite can. One evening, after several ales and a generous dose from Thomas's flask, you feel better than you've felt in months. Maybe better than you've felt in years. The pain in your back is completely gone. Your mind is peaceful. Your body is warm and relaxed. You're laughing with Thomas, telling stories, feeling genuinely happy. This is what people don't understand about drug use. It's not always about getting messed up or escaping reality. Sometimes it's about feeling normal, feeling human, feeling connected and present and okay. For people dealing with constant pain or anxiety or trauma, substances that relieve that suffering are genuinely helpful. They make life livable. The problem is that this relief comes with a price that accumulates slowly. So slowly, you don't notice it at first. The tolerance building, the dependence forming, the need increasing, the control slipping away so gradually that you don't realize it's happening until it's already happened. But right now, sitting in the tavern with Thomas, laughing for the first time in months, you don't see the danger. You just feel grateful. Grateful for Agnes and her herbs. Grateful for this medicine that's given you your life back. Grateful for this relief from the grinding misery that used to consume every moment. You head home feeling good, better than good. Your wife sees your face when you walk in, and her expression tightens. She knows you've been drinking. She can smell the ale, but there's something else too. Something in your eyes. A distance. A softness that worries her. How much did you have tonight? She asks. Just a few ales, you say, which is true. But you don't mention Thomas's flask. Don't mention the herbs mixed with the alcohol. Because you know she'd worry. And there's no reason to worry. You're fine. Everything's fine. You fall asleep easily. Heavily. Your wife lies awake next to you, listening to your too deep breathing, and worries. The next morning, you wake up feeling terrible. Worse than a normal ale hangover. Your head is pounding. Your stomach is churning. Your muscles ash, cold sweats, shaking hands. This is withdrawal starting to show itself more clearly. Your body is already dependent enough that a night of heavy use followed by sleeping without a dose leaves you feeling sick. You tell yourself it's just a hangover. Too much, Al. You need to be more careful. But you also need to feel better right now because you have work to do. So you take your morning dose. The medicine that's supposed to be for pain, that you definitely still need. For your back, for all the completely legitimate reasons, the sickness fades within half an hour. You feel normal again, functional, ready to work. See, the herbs help. You made the right choice using them. Your wife watches this pattern with growing concern. She sees you drinking the tea every morning now, every evening, sometimes during the day. She sees you going back to Agnes more frequently, spending money you don't have on herbs. She sees the changes in you, the distance in your eyes, the irritability when you miss a dose, the way you've started organizing your whole day around when you can take the medicine. But she doesn't know how to talk to you about it. In medieval times, there's no language for addiction as a medical condition. There's no understanding of physical dependence. There's just people who use too much and moral judgments about weakness and sin. She's worried, but she doesn't want to accuse you of being weak or sinful. And besides, you had legitimate pain. You needed help. When does appropriate medicine use cross into something else? How can she tell? So she stays quiet and watches and worries. And you keep using. Every day, multiple times a day now. The herbs that started as desperate medicine for unbearable pain have become just part of your routine. Morning dose, midday dose, evening dose. Sometimes more if you're having a hard day. Sometimes mixed with ale if you're at the tavern. You tell yourself you can stop whenever you want. You're not like Margaret, who sold her wedding ring to pay for herbs. You're not like the old man down the street who everyone whispers about, who's clearly too far gone. You're functional. You work. You provide for your family. You're fine. But you haven't gone a single day without the herbs in 2 months now. Not one day. And if you're honest with yourself, the thought of going without them makes you anxious. Not because of pain, because of what you know will happen if you stop. The sickness, the shaking, the awful feeling of everything being wrong. You need them now. Not want. Need. There's a difference, though you don't like to think about it. The tooth that started this whole thing is long healed. The infection is gone. The pain from that is over. But somehow, you're using more herbs now than you were when you were actively suffering from an infected tooth. How did that happen? When did medicine become necessity? You don't have good answers to these questions, so you don't ask them. You just keep using. Keep telling yourself, it's fine. Keep watching the supply in your cloth bag decrease and calculating how long before you need to go back to Agnes. The trap has closed. You just don't realize it yet. Or maybe you do realize it, somewhere deep down. But you can't face that knowledge, because if you admit you're trapped, you have to do something about it. And doing something about it means stopping. And stopping means withdrawal. And withdrawal means suffering worse than the tooth infection ever was. So you don't think about it. You just use. One day at a time. One dose at a time. Telling yourself, it's fine. Everything's fine. Until one day, it isn't fine anymore. But that's a problem for future you. Right now, you've got your evening dose to take. And after that, you'll sleep deep and dreamless. The way you can only sleep now with the herbs. The relief you prayed for has become the cage you can't escape. But you don't see the bars yet. You just see the relief. 3 months have passed since you first walked into Agnes's cottage with that infected tooth. The tooth is long gone. The infection is a distant memory. But you're using more herbs now than you ever did when you were actually sick. Every morning, the same routine. You wake up feeling terrible. Not hungover. Exactly. Though there's some of that if you were at the tavern the night before. This is something different. Something worse. Your muscles ache deep in the bones. Your skin feels wrong. Like it's too tight or crawling with invisible insects. Cold sweats soak through your shirt even though you're shivering. Your stomach churns. Waves of nausea wash over you. Your hands shake when you try to do simple tasks. The anxiety is the worst part. A crushing, overwhelming sense that something terrible is about to happen. That everything is wrong. That you're dying or going mad or both. Your heart races. Your thoughts spiral. Every small problem becomes catastrophic in your mind. The feeling is so intense, so consuming, that you can barely function. But you know how to make it stop. The herbs, the tea, the medicine, whatever you want to call it, you've got your pot ready. You've learned to prepare it the night before, so it's faster in the morning. You drink it down, that bitter familiar taste. And then you wait. 20 minutes, 30 at most. And then, like a miracle that happens every single morning, you start to feel normal. The muscle aches fade. The nausea settles. The anxiety retreats. The shaking stops. Your heart rate slows to normal. The crushing sense of doom lifts. You can breathe again. You can think again. You can function. This is your baseline now. Not high. Not euphoric. Just not sick. Just normal. The way other people feel when they wake up without having to drink drugged tea first. You don't get high anymore. That initial rush of relief and euphoria, that soft, peaceful feeling from the first time you used gone. Your body has adapted, built tolerance, changed its chemistry to accommodate the constant presence of opiates. Now you're just using to avoid withdrawal. Using to feel like a regular person feels naturally. But you don't think of it that way. You think you still have pain that needs managing. Your back does hurt. That's real. Farm work is brutal. But the pain isn't worse than it was before the tooth infection. It's just that now you have a solution for it. So you use that solution. That's just being smart about managing your health. Right, the problem is that you're using more. Much more. That first dose Agnes gave you, half a cup of tea, doesn't do anything now. You need 2 full cups to feel normal. 3, if you want to actually feel good. 4, if you've been at the tavern, mixing it with ale, and even at those higher doses, the effect is muted. Shorter. You're lucky if it lasts 3 or 4 hours before the discomfort starts creeping back. Before that anxious, sick feeling begins to rise again. Before you start thinking about the next dose, your life has become a cycle of dosing and counting hours until the next dose. You wake up sick. You take herbs. You feel normal. You work. The herbs wear off. You start feeling sick again. You take more herbs. You feel normal. You go to the tavern. You mix herbs with ale. You feel good for a few hours. You go home. You sleep. You wake up sick. Repeat. Every day. The same pattern, like water flowing downhill. Following the path of least resistance. You don't decide to use anymore. You just do it. Automatically, Because not using means feeling terrible. And using means feeling okay. It's not even a choice. It's just necessity. The money is becoming a problem. A serious problem. Those cloth bags from Agnes aren't cheap. And you're going through them faster than you used to. What used to last you a week now lasts 3 days. You're at her cottage twice a week now. Sometimes more. Your wife has started hiding money from you. You found out when you went looking for the household savings and discovered she'd moved it. When you confronted her, she admitted it. Said she was worried about how much you were spending on herbs. Said the family needed money for food. For necessities. Said you were choosing medicine over everything else. You got angry. Told her she didn't understand. Told her you needed the medicine. That you had legitimate pain. That you weren't like those people who were addicted. You were just managing a medical condition. How dare she act like you were doing something wrong? She backed down. But she didn't stop hiding the money. You still find it sometimes. Take what you need for Agnes. Tell yourself you'll pay it back. Tell yourself it's borrowing, not stealing. Tell yourself it's necessary. Work is suffering. You're still showing up to the fields, but you're slower than you used to be. Make mistakes. Forget things. The Lord's steward has noticed. Pulled you aside last week and told you to shape up. Said there are plenty of other men who'd take your place if you can't do the job. Said you used to be reliable and now you're not. That scared you. Genuinely scared you. In medieval England, if you lose your position on the Lord's land, your options are extremely limited. Starvation is a real possibility. Becoming a beggar. Losing everything. You promised the steward you'd do better. And you meant it. For 2 days. You tried to cut back on the herbs. Used less. Tried to push through the discomfort. Told yourself you needed to get your life back under control. Those 2 days were hell. Absolute hell. The withdrawal symptoms were worse than anything you'd experienced with the tooth infection. Your whole body hurt. Every muscle. Every joint. Every bone. Like you'd been beaten. Like you had the worst flu imaginable. You couldn't eat. Couldn't sleep. Couldn't think. Just shaking and sweating and feeling like you were dying. On the 3rd day, you gave up. Took a large dose. The relief was immediate and intense. Like coming up for air after being held underwater. You could breathe again. The suffering stopped. And that's when you understood. Really understood. You couldn't stop. Not without help. Not without support. And there was no help. No support. Just Agnes selling herbs and the church offering prayers that didn't work. You were alone with this. Trapped. But you couldn't think about that too much, or you'd panic. So, you just kept using. Kept trying to maintain. Kept pretending everything was fine. Thomas, your friend from the tavern, is still functional. He's been using herbs for years. Ever since his construction accident, he works every day. Supports his family. He's managed to find some kind of equilibrium. If he can do it, so can you. You just need to be more disciplined. More careful. But Thomas has also noticed you're using more. He mentioned it last week at the tavern. Said, maybe you should ease off a bit. Said he's seen people go down this road before and it doesn't end well. You told him you were fine. That you knew what you were doing. That you appreciated the concern, but you had it under control. He didn't look convinced. But he dropped it. What else could he do? There's no intervention. No rehab. No addiction counseling. Just people using and hoping they don't end up like Margaret. Margaret, the widow who used herbs for grief and insomnia. You used to see her around the village. Used to say hello. Over the past few months, you've watched her deteriorate. She's lost weight. Looks pale. Sickly. Her eyes have this hollow, Desperada look. She sold her good cooking pot last month to pay for herbs. Then she sold her husband's tools. Then her wedding ring. People whisper about her, shake their heads, cluck their tongues, say it's such a shame, say she's weak, say she should just pray more, say she's bringing shame to her late husband's memory. Nobody helps her. They just judge and avoid her. Because addiction is frightening. It shows how fragile the line is between normal person and desperate wreck. If it can happen to Margaret, it can happen to anyone. Better to believe she's somehow different, somehow weaker, somehow more sinful. You tell yourself you're different from Margaret. You're still working, still functioning, still providing for your family. You're not selling possessions. Not yet anyway. But you're starting to understand how she got there. When every coin matters and you need medicine, you start making calculations. What can you live without? What can you sell? What's more important, food or relief from suffering? One evening, you meet someone new at the tavern. A man you don't recognize. Traveling through, he's got the look of someone who's been using herbs heavily. That gaunt face, those desperate eyes, the slight tremor in the hands. He sees you drinking your ale with Thomas's flask edition. Recognizes what it is immediately. Users can always spot other users. He leans in close. If Agnes's poppy isn't doing it for you anymore, he says quietly, you should try Mandrake. Stronger. Works better. You've heard of Mandrake. Everyone has. It's famous, legendary. The root that looks like a little person, the plant that screams when you pull it up, the medieval anesthetic powerful enough to knock someone unconscious for surgery. It's also dangerous. Really dangerous. The line between effective dose and fatal dose is razor thin. Agnes has some, but she rarely sells it. Only for the worst cases. Surgery. Dying people who need their pain managed at the end. It's not something you use casually. But this traveler is using it. Regularly. From the sound of it, he tells you where you can get some. There's an herbalist in the next town over who'll sell it without asking too many questions. For the right price, you tell him you're fine with what you've got. You don't need anything stronger. You're being responsible about your medicine use. But you remember his words. You file away the information. Just in case. Just if things get worse. Just as a backup option. A week later, things get worse. Agnes cuts you off. You show up at her cottage for your usual supply, and she refuses to sell to you. You're using too much. She says flatly. I've seen this before. I know where it leads. I won't be part of it anymore. You panic. Actually panic. Your heart races. Your hands shake. Where will you get herbs now? You need them. You can't just stop. Doesn't she understand that you beg? You promise you'll cut back. You swear you're being careful. You tell her you have legitimate pain. You need this medicine. Please. She's unmoved. She's heard all these promises before. From dozens of people over the years. The promises never mean anything. Go home. She says. Try to stop. I know it's hard. But continuing is worse. She closes the door in your face. You stand there for a long moment, feeling like the ground has dropped out from under you. What are you supposed to do now? How are you supposed to manage? The thought of withdrawal? Of days and days of feeling sick. Of not sleeping. Of everything hurting. It's unbearable. You can't do it. You literally can't. That's when you remember the traveler. The other herbalist. The next town over. You tell yourself this is just temporary. Just until Agnes calms down and realizes you're serious about being more careful. Just to get you through the next few days. You're not doing anything wrong. You're managing a medical condition. You have a right to medicine. The walk to the next town takes half a day. It's farther than you've traveled in months. Your body isn't in great shape anymore. You're thinner than you used to be. Weaker. The constant drugs have suppressed your appetite. You eat enough to survive, but not much more. Your clothes hang loose. The herbalist the traveler mentioned is easy to find. His shop is in a questionable part of town. The kind of place you wouldn't normally go. Dark. Narrow streets. People watching from doorways with calculating eyes. The herbalist himself is older than Agnes. Thinner. Harder. He looks at you and knows exactly why you're there. Knows what you need. Has seen 1,000 people just like you walk through his door. What do you want? He asks. Mandrake. You hear yourself say. He doesn't ask why. Doesn't offer warnings. Just names a price. A high price. Almost all the money you have in your pocket. But you pay it. What choice do you have? He gives you a small cloth bag. Smaller than what Agnes usually sells. The contents look different. Darker. The smell is stronger. More bitter. Almost chemical. Careful with this, he says. Not like Agnes's concerned warnings. Just a flat statement of fact. Too much, and you won't wake up. Start small. You take the bag and walk home. The whole way. You're thinking about that dose, anticipating it. By the time you reach your cottage, you're feeling sick. Withdrawal starting? Your body knows relief is close and it wants it now. Your wife isn't home. She's at her mother's house. Probably complaining about you. You're alone. Which is good because you don't want her to see you try the mandrake. Don't want to deal with her worry and judgment. You prepare it the way the herbalist told you. Just a small amount in hot water. The tea is darker than poppy tea. Thicker somehow. The smell makes your stomach turn, but you drink it anyway. And wait. The mandrake hits different. Harder. Faster. Within minutes, your vision starts to blur. The walls of your cottage seem to breathe. To move, you feel disconnected from your body, like you're floating slightly above yourself, looking down at this person sitting on a bench. And is that you? It looks like you but also doesn't. Everything is strange. The pain is gone. Completely gone. Not distant like with Poppy. Just absent. Your body feels nothing. You could put your hand in fire right now and probably wouldn't feel it. This is what they use for surgery. This is what makes cutting through flesh and bone bearable. Complete disconnection from physical sensation. But it's not entirely pleasant. Your thoughts are scattered. Hard to hold on to. You try to remember what you were thinking about a moment ago and can't. Time becomes weird. Are you sitting here for minutes or hours? No way to tell. Everything stretches and compresses. There are shadows in the corners of the room. They're moving. Not just flickering in the firelight. Actually moving. Reaching. You know, somewhere in the rational part of your brain that still functions. That this is hallucination. The mandrake causes vision. Everyone knows that. But knowing doesn't make the shadows less present. Less real. You close your eyes. That's worse. Behind your eyelids. Shapes swirl. Faces form and dissolve. Not frightening exactly. But unsettling. Alien. Wrong. Time pass. Could be an hour. Could be 4. Eventually, the intensity fades. You're left feeling hollowed out. Exhausted. Your mouth is incredibly dry. Your thoughts are slow and thick. But the withdrawal symptoms are gone. The mandrake worked. Probably too well. When your wife comes home, she finds you on the floor. You don't remember lying down. Don't remember time passing. She's terrified. Thought you were dead when she first saw you. Unresponsive. Barely breathing. She shook you and called your name, and you eventually swam back to consciousness. What did you take? She demands. Her fear has turned to anger. That wasn't your usual herbs. What did you take? You can't lie to her. Then barely speak. Just mumble. Mandrake. The look on her face, horror and disappointment and fear all mixed together. Why? Why would you take that? Agnes cut me off. You managed to explain. I needed something. I couldn't be sick. I can't stop. I tried. I can't. And there it is. The admission. Out loud. To her and to yourself. You can't stop. This isn't medicine use anymore. This isn't pain management. This is addiction. This is dependency. This is your life controlled by substances you can't live without. Your wife starts crying. Not angry crying. Sad crying. Defeated crying. What do we do? She asks. How do we fix this? You don't have an answer. In medieval England, there is no answer. There's no treatment. No support. No path to recovery that anyone knows about. There's just quit or die. And quitting seems impossible. Literally impossible. I'll try to stop. You tell her, knowing even as you say it that you probably won't. Can't. I'll be more careful. I'll use less. These are the same promises you made to yourself months ago. They didn't work then. They won't work now. But what else can you say? She helps you to bed. You sleep? But it's not restful. Your dreams are dark and confused. Fragments of nightmares. You wake multiple times in cold sweats. By morning, you feel terrible again. That familiar sick feeling. Withdrawal calling. You have more mandrake? You know you shouldn't take it. It's too dangerous. Too powerful. Last night proved that. But the alternative is being sick. And you can't be sick. Can't function feeling like that. You take a smaller dose this time. Just enough to feel normal. Not enough for the visions. Just maintenance. Just to get through the day. This becomes your new pattern. Mandrake instead of poppy. Stronger drugs for stronger tolerance. The escalation that everyone warned about. The thing you swore wouldn't happen to you. Over the next few weeks, your life continues to fall apart in slow motion. You're missing work more often. When you do show up, you're barely functional. The steward gives you a final warning. One more incident and you're done. Your wife stops talking to you much. Just moves through the cottage in silence. Doing what needs to be done but with no warmth. No connection. You've become a stranger to her. A problem to be managed rather than a husband to love. You've started stealing more seriously. Took your neighbor's chickens and sold them. Blamed it on foxes. Took money from the church collection box. That one made you feel sick with guilt. But not sick enough to stop. The people you used to be friendly with avoid you now. They've figured out what's going on. In small medieval villages, everyone knows everything. They know you're using too much. Know you're not right. Know you're becoming one of those cautionary tales that parents use to scare their children. Thomas stopped inviting you to sit with him at the tavern. Said his wife was uncomfortable with your friendship. Said maybe you should sort yourself out before coming around. That hurt. Thomas was using too. But he was functional. You're not anymore. There's a line. And you've crossed it. Margaret died 2 weeks ago. Mandrake overdose. They found her in her cottage. Alone. She'd lost everything by then. Sold everything. Had nothing left but the drugs. And then she took too much. Accidentally or on purpose. No one knows. She stopped breathing in her sleep. Just stopped. You went to her burial. Stood at the back. Watched them put her in the ground with barely any ceremony. She died in sin. The priest said, gave herself over to vice. It was God's judgment. But you looked at her body wrapped in cheap cloth and you saw yourself. saw where you were headed, saw the inevitable endpoint of the path you're on. You should stop. You know you should stop, but you don't know how, and no one knows how to help you. And so, you keep using. Day after day. Getting worse. Losing more. Becoming less. The person you were 6 months ago. The one who went to Agnes with an infected tooth. That person is gone. You're someone else now. Someone controlled by need. Someone who'll do things you never thought you'd do. Someone who's become exactly what you swore you'd never be. The cage has closed completely. You're trapped inside it. And there's no key. No escape. Just more drugs to delay the inevitable. Just more using until something breaks. Until you end up like Margaret. Or worse. Medieval Europe has no mercy for people like you. No understanding. No treatment. No second chances. Just moral judgment and slow destruction. You're dying. Slowly. Visibly. And there's nothing anyone can do. Nothing you can do. Except use again. Take another dose. Feel normal for a few more hours. Push away the reality of your situation for another day. So that's what you do. Because it's all you know how to do anymore. The escape has become the cage. And the cage is shrinking. You decide to try quitting. Really try this time. Not just cutting back or making vague promises. Actually stopping. Cold turkey. As they'll call it centuries later. Because you finally scared yourself enough to try. It happened 3 nights ago. You took too much mandrake. Not intentionally. You're just so tolerant now that you're constantly miscalculating doses. What would have knocked you unconscious 6 months ago barely touches you now. So you keep taking more. Trying to feel something. Trying to get relief. You blacked out. Completely. Your wife found you on the floor again. But this time, you weren't breathing right. Shallow. Slow breaths. Too slow. She couldn't wake you. She genuinely thought you were dying. She ran to get the priest because she thought she needed to give you last rites. By the time they got back, you'd started breathing more normally. Came to slowly. Confused and sick. The priest looked at you with disgust. Told you that you were throwing away God's gift of life. That you were sinning against your own body, which is a temple. That if you died in this state, in the act of deliberate intoxication, your soul would be forfeit. Hell awaited. After he left, your wife sat next to you in the dark cottage and cried. Not angry crying anymore. Just exhausted. Hopeless crying. She told you she couldn't watch you die. That she loved you. Or at least she loved who you used to be. But she couldn't do this anymore. If you didn't stop, she was taking the children and leaving. Going to her family, you'd be alone. That threat cut through the fog in your mind. Your children. You have children. 2 of them. A boy and a girl. When did you last really look at them? Really spend time with them? Weeks? Probably. You've been so consumed by managing your doses, by avoiding withdrawal, by maintaining, that they've become background figures in your own life. Your son is afraid of you now. You saw it in his eyes recently. Fear. Of his own father. Because you've been unpredictable. Angry sometimes when the drugs wear off. Distant and strange when you've taken too much. He doesn't understand what's wrong with you. He just knows something is. That his father isn't right anymore. Your daughter still tries to connect with you. She's younger. Still believes in you. Still brings you things she's made. Little braided grass figures. Hoping for your attention and approval. And you barely notice. Barely respond. You're too focused on when you can take the next dose. That image of your wife leaving. Taking the children. You being alone in this cottage with nothing but your drugs. It terrifies you. Genuinely terrifies you. More than the priest's warnings about hell. You don't want to be that person. That cautionary tale. That man who lost his family to herbs. So you decide. You're stopping. Today. Right now. No more doze. No more mandrake. No more poppy. No more anything. You'll suffer through withdrawal. People survive it. You've heard they do. It's horrible, but not fatal. Usually, you'll get through it. You'll get your life back. You'll be a husband and father again instead of just a user. You pour out your remaining supply. Watch the dark liquid soak into the earth floor of your cottage. Your wife watches too. Hopeful but guarded. She's heard promises before. The first 8 hours aren't too bad. Uncomfortable but manageable. You've been through mild withdrawal before. In the gaps between doses. This feels like that. Muscle aches. Slight nausea. Growing anxiety. Unpleasant but survivable. Then evening comes. That's when it really starts. The muscle aches intensify into full body pain. Every muscle cramping. Your legs seize up. Charley horses so severe, you cry out. Your back spasms. Your neck locks. It feels like your body is tearing itself apart from the inside. Your stomach revolts. You're vomiting. But there's nothing in your stomach to bring up. Just bile and acid. Even until your ribs hurt. And then there's the other end. Diarrhea. Uncontrollable. You're running to the latrine behind the cottage every few minutes. Your body is purging itself. Rejecting everything. You can't get warm. You're shivering so violently your teeth chatter. Your wife piles every blanket you own on top of you. Builds up the fire. Doesn't matter. You're freezing from the inside out. And then, minutes later, you're burning up, throwing off the blankets, sweating through your clothes. Your body's temperature regulation is completely broken. The anxiety is beyond description. It's not rational fear. It's existential dread. A bone-deep certainty that something terrible is happening. That you're dying. That the world is ending. That everything is wrong and will always be wrong. Your heart races. You can't catch your breath. Panic attack after panic attack. Waves of terror washing over you with no source and no relief. You can't sleep. At all. Your body is exhausted, but your mind won't stop. Racing thoughts. Spiraling fears. Every time you close your eyes, you're jolted awake by another cramp or wave of nausea or surge of panic. Hour after hour of consciousness with no rest. No break. No peace. Your wife tries to help. Brings you water, which you can't keep down. Sits with you, which helps slightly. Her presence, a small comfort in the nightmare. But she's exhausted too. Scared. She's never seen you like this. Didn't know withdrawal could be this severe. By the second day, you're seeing things. Shadows moving in corners. Spiders that aren't there crawling on the walls. Your dead grandmother standing in the doorway. Watching you with disapproving eyes. You know, logically, that these are hallucinations. Withdrawal can cause them. But knowing doesn't make them less vivid. Less real in the moment. Your skin crawls. Literally feels like insects are crawling under your skin. You scratch until you bleed, trying to get them out. Your wife has to hold your hands to stop you from tearing your own skin apart. The emotional pain is worse than the physical. Depression's so heavy you can barely breathe under the weight of it. Everything is hopeless. Everything is meaningless. Your life is ruined. Your family would be better off without you. You've destroyed everything, and there's no point in continuing. The thoughts are intrusive and constant and so convincing. You cry, sob like a child. Not from pain, though there's plenty of that. From despair. From the crushing weight of what you've done to yourself. From the understanding that you did this. You made these choices, and now you're suffering the consequences. By the third day, you're not entirely sure you're still alive. Maybe you died, and this is hell. That would make sense. The priest said you'd go to hell if you died in sin. Maybe you did. Maybe this endless suffering is your eternal punishment. Your wife calls for the local healer. Not Agnes. She won't come. But there's an old man who knows some herb lore. He examines you, feels your racing pulse, looks at your pupil, and shakes his head. He needs to stop, the healer says. But slowly, stopping all at once like this, it can kill a man. I've seen it. The body goes into shock. Sometimes the heart gives out. So what do we do? Your wife asks desperately. Give him a little, just a little. Enough to take the edge off. Then gradually reduce over weeks. Not all at once. But you don't have any left. You poured it all out in a moment of conviction you now regret more than anything in your life. Then you need to get some. The healer says simply, from somewhere? Or he might not survive this. Your wife looks at you, at your shaking, sweating, broken body, at the desperation in your eyes. She makes a decision. She goes to the shady herbalist in the next town. The one who sold you the mandrake. She uses the last of the hidden money, comes back with a small amount. Just enough for a controlled taper. The healer said. When she offers it to you, you nearly cry with relief. Take it with shaking hands. Drink it down. Within 20 minutes, the worst of the suffering eases. Not gone, but bearable. You can breathe again. You've failed. Failed at quitting. Failed at being strong enough. Failed at saving yourself. But at least you're not dying anymore. At least not right this moment. The healer's plan was good in theory. Taper gradually. Reduce the dose little by little. Give your body time to adjust. But it requires discipline you don't have. It requires someone measuring out precise doses and keeping them away from you between times. It requires support and structure and medical knowledge. You have none of that. So you take too much. Can't help it. The suffering is too intense. Within a week, you're back to your regular doses. The attempt to quit has failed completely. And now your wife is out of money. Actually out. There's nothing left. And you still need more. You start thinking about what you can sell. Around the village, you're not the only casualty. There are others. Have been for years. You're just more aware of them now. Now that you're one of them, there's old William. He's not actually old. Maybe 40. But everyone calls him that because he looks 70. Years of drinking and using herbs have destroyed him. He shakes constantly. Can barely work. Survives on charity from the church. Though they make him pray for hours to earn his daily bread. He sleeps in a shed behind the tavern. Has nothing. Is nothing. In the eyes of the village, just a cautionary tale. A warning about what happens when you don't control yourself. You used to look at him with pity and a little disgust. Now you look at him and see your future. That's where you're headed. You know it. Everyone knows it. There was young John, 16 years old. Started using poppy after he broke his arm working in the fields. The break was bad. Bone sticking through skin. He needed something for the pain while it healed. But it never really healed right. Left him with chronic pain. So he kept using. His parents tried to stop him. Locked him in their cottage while he went through withdrawal. He escaped. Ran away. They found him 3 days later in the forest. Dead from exposure. He'd taken the last of his herbs and wandered off. Probably hallucinating. And got lost. Froze to death one night. His mother still cries about it. You've seen her in the village. This hollowed-out woman who lost her son to herbs and cold. She blames herself. Blames Agnes for selling to him. Blames the boy for being weak. Blames God for allowing such suffering. The blame changes depending on the day. But her son is still dead. There's Mad Catherine. She's not actually mad. Or wasn't originally. But she used henbane heavily for years. For anxiety and insomnia. It worked at first. Then it didn't. Then she started using more and more. The henbane caused permanent changes to her mind. She sees things that aren't there. Hears voices. Can't tell the difference between real and unreal anymore. She wanders the village talking to people who died years ago. Children throw stones at her. Adults avoid her. She lives in a partially collapsed building, eating scraps. Lost in her own broken mind. The substances didn't just take her life. They took her sanity. Permanently. Even if she stopped using now, she'd never fully recover. The damage is done. Thomas, your former friend from the tavern, used to be the success story. The one who managed it, who used herbs for legitimate pain and stayed functional. Kept working, kept his family. Last month, he fell off a roof. Construction accident. Broke his neck. Died instantly. But here's the thing. The accident probably wasn't an accident. Thomas was impaired. Had been drinking and using. His coordination was off. His judgment was poor. He took a risk he shouldn't have taken. Climbing up when he should have waited for help. The herbs killed him just as surely as if he'd overdosed. Just less directly. His wife and children are destitute now. No income. No support. The church helps a little. Charity from neighbors helps a little. But it's not enough. They'll probably have to leave the village. Go to the city and hope for better fortune. Most likely they'll end up begging. Or worse. Thomas's death scared you. Could easily have been you. In fact, it should worry you more than it does. But you're too focused on getting through each day to really process it. Just another tragedy. Just another casualty. Just the background noise of medieval life. Then there was the ergot outbreak. It happened during harvest season. The rye crop looked good. Abundant. Everyone was relieved because the previous year's harvest had been poor. This year would be better. The village would eat well through winter. But some of the rye was contaminated. Ergot fungus growing on the grain, looking like elongated dark kernels. Most people didn't notice it during threshing. It got ground up with the good grain. Went into the flour. Went into the bread. Within a week, people were getting sick. Not just a few people. Dozens. Maybe half the village. The symptoms were terrifying. Hallucinations. People seeing demons in their houses. Seeing their neighbors transform into monsters. Children screaming about creatures under their beds. Adults convinced they were being attacked by invisible forces. Convulsions. Bodies sizing up. Falling down. Shaking uncontrollably. The priest performed exorcisms. They didn't help. How could they? This wasn't possession. This was poisoning. Then came Saint-Tang. Anthony's fire. That's what they called it. A burning sensation in the extremities. People felt like their hands and feet were on fire. Unbearable burning. But when you looked, there was nothing there. No flame. No burn. Just the sensation. Except then the flesh started turning black. Gangrene, setting in as the ergot compounds constricted blood vessels. Cutting off circulation. Killing tissue. People's fingers turned black. Then fell off. Toes fell off. One man lost his entire foot. Just died and detached. The pain was beyond description. The hallucinations were ongoing. People were dying, or wishing they could die. Praying for death to end the suffering. The village priest declared it was God's judgment. Punishment for collective sin. He led prayer vigils. Days of fasting. Public confessions. None of it helped. How could it? You can't pray away contaminated grain. Eventually, someone figured out it was the bread. Stopped eating it. Burned the contaminated stores. The outbreak ended. But not before it killed 8 people. Maimed dozens more. Left permanent scars on survivors. Physical and mental. You watched all this happen and thought about your own drug use. About the substances you took voluntarily. About how ergot was just another plant. Like poppy or mandrake. How all of them could help or kill depending on dose and luck. How medieval people were always just one contaminated meal away from accidental mass poisoning. And you thought about how your intentional poisoning wasn't that different. You were dosing yourself with powerful substances every day. Playing the same odds. Hoping you got the dose right. Hoping the batch wasn't too strong. Hoping you'd wake up tomorrow. You've been lucky so far. But luck runs out. Your family is destroyed. That's becoming undeniable. Your wife barely speaks to you anymore. When she does, her voice is flat, emotionless. She's given up hope. She's stopped trying to save you. Now she's just trying to protect the children from watching you destroy yourself. Your son avoids you. Comes home from his work in the fields and goes straight to sleep. Doesn't sit with you. Doesn't talk to you. You're an embarrassment to him. A shame he has to carry. His father, the village drunk, the herb user, the failure. Your daughter still loves you. But even she's starting to pull away. She's young but not stupid. She sees how you prioritize getting your medicine over spending time with her. How you promise to play with her later, but later never comes because you're too drugged or too sick. She's learning not to trust you, not to depend on you. You're breaking her heart in slow motion. The cottage is falling apart. Repairs you should have made months ago haven't happened. The roof leaks. One of the walls is developing a crack. The garden is overgrown with weeds because you haven't tended it. Your wife does what she can. But she can't do everything. Can't be both parents. Can't be both workers. Can't hold together what you're tearing apart. You've stolen from your own family, taken their food money, their emergency savings, their future, all converted into herbs and drinks and temporary relief from suffering you created yourself. The church has stopped helping. The priest made it clear. You're a sinner choosing your sin. There's no charity for that. If you won't help yourself, God won't help you. Come back when you're serious about repentance. Actual repentance. Not just words. Your neighbors have stopped acknowledging you. They look through you. Step aside when you approach. Conversations stop when you enter the tavern. You're a pariah. Contagious. Like if they interact with you, they might catch whatever moral disease you have. In medieval villages, social death comes before physical death. You're still walking around. Still breathing. But you're already dead in the ways that matter. Dead to your community. Dead to your family. Dead to yourself. And you don't know how to fix it. That's the worst part. If there was a path back, you'd take it. You think you'd take it. But there's no path. No program. No treatment. No support. No understanding. The medieval explanation for your condition is that you're weak. Morally weak. You gave in to temptation. You chose pleasure over duty. You're sinful. The solution, according to the church, is to pray more, have more faith, exercise more willpower. Just stop. But you've tried just stopping. You nearly died. The suffering was unbearable, beyond what any human should have to endure. And you had to give up. The medical explanation, such as it exists, is that you have an imbalance of humors, too much black bile, probably making you melancholic and prone to seeking false remedies. The treatment would be bloodletting, purging, maybe some leeches, none of which would help and might kill you. The folk explanation is that you're cursed. Maybe by a witch, maybe by God himself. Something supernatural has taken hold of you. You need an exorcism, or a pilgrimage to some distant shrine, or a miracle, something beyond normal human help. All of these explanations are wrong, but they're all your medieval world has to offer. There's no concept of addiction as a medical condition, no understanding of brain chemistry, no knowledge of physical dependence, no framework for treating this as a disease rather than a moral failure. So you're blamed for something you can't control, punished for suffering, abandoned for being sick. Because in medieval times, if you can't explain something, you make it the person's fault. Easier than admitting ignorance. Easier than saying, we don't know how to help you. You're dying. Slowly but certainly. The herbs are killing you. Your body can't sustain this level of constant intoxication. Your liver is failing. Your kidneys are struggling. Your heart is damaged. You're malnourished. You're weak. You get sick often and take longer to recover. You know you're dying. Your wife knows. Your children know, though they don't want to. The village knows and is waiting for it. Waiting for the inevitable moment when you take too much or your body just gives out. Waiting to bury you with minimal ceremony. The way they buried Margaret. Another cautionary tale complete. And you can't stop. That's the cruelest part. You know it's killing you. You want to stop, but you can't. The withdrawal is too severe. The addiction too strong. The medieval world too lacking in any actual help. You're trapped in a nightmare of your own creation, though you didn't know you were creating it at the time. You just wanted pain relief. That's all. Just wanted your tooth to stop hurting. And now you're dying from the medicine that saved you. If this was just your story, it would be tragic enough. But it's not just your story. It's the story of countless medieval people. The ones who used substances to manage the brutal reality of medieval life and got trapped. The ones who had legitimate pain and legitimate need for relief and found that relief came with a price they couldn't afford to pay, but couldn't afford not to pay. Some of them managed it, found some sustainable level of use, stayed functional enough, like Thomas did, until he didn't. Many didn't manage it, ended up like Margaret, like Mad Catherine, like you. Casualties of medieval medicine. Victims of substances that worked too well and cost too much. Medieval Europe didn't count these deaths, didn't track them, didn't study them, just buried the bodies and moved on. So we don't know how many there were, how common this was, how many lives were destroyed by the same plants that saved others. But they were there. In every village, every town, every city, people trapped by substances they needed and couldn't escape, suffering without help, dying without understanding, lost to history except as whispered warnings and forgotten graves. Your story is their story, playing out in 1,000 variations across centuries. The same pattern, the same trap, the same inevitable end. Because without understanding addiction as disease, without medical treatment, without support and compassion, there's only one way this goes. Down, always down, until you hit bottom. And in medieval times, bottom was often death. You're still here, still using, still dying, still hoping, somehow, that something will change, that someone will help, that you'll find the strength to stop, that a miracle will happen. But miracles are rare, and help isn't coming, and you're running out of time. The consequences they never told you about when you first took those herbs aren't abstract anymore. They're your life, your destroyed family, your ruined reputation, your failing body, your dying spirit. This is what getting high in medieval times really meant. Not fun or escape or spiritual enlightenment. Just suffering followed by different suffering. A trap disguised as a solution. Medicine that became poison. Relief that became torture. And there's no way out. Not for you. Not for the others. Just the slow, inevitable end. Welcome to medieval addiction. Population too many. Survival rate too low. Understanding zero. This is what they never told you. This is the truth they couldn't explain. This is the price no one mentioned when you were desperately seeking relief from unbearable pain. You got relief. And it destroyed you. Come back now. Come back from that medieval cottage. From that dying body. From that destroyed life. Come back to the present. To your own time. To your own bed where you're lying safely, listening to this story. Take a breath. You're here. You're now? You're not that medieval peasant trapped by substances they didn't understand. You're you. In the 21st century, where we know things medieval people didn't, where we have options they couldn't imagine, where understanding exists, even if it's not perfect. Let's talk about what we know now. What science has taught us about addiction that would have saved that medieval peasant if only the knowledge had existed. Addiction is a disease, not a moral failure, not a character weakness, not a sin, a disease. A medical condition involving brain chemistry and neural pathways and physical changes to the structure of the brain itself. Here's what happens when you use opioids. Whether that's medieval poppy tea or modern OxyContin, the drug molecules bind to opioid receptors in your brain. These receptors exist naturally. Your body makes its own opioids, endorphins, that bind to these receptors to regulate pain and mood and stress. That's normal. That's healthy. But when you introduce external opioids, especially in large amounts, everything changes. Your brain is flooded with more opioid activity than it's designed to handle. It feels good. Too good. Your brain registers this as important, as necessary, as something to repeat, and then, to compensate for this flood, your brain adjusts. It reduces the number of opioid receptors. It downregulates natural endorphin production. It changes its baseline to account for the constant presence of the drug. This is tolerance. This is why you need more to feel the same effect. But here's the crucial part. Once these changes happen, your brain needs the external opioids just to function normally. Without them, you're not at baseline anymore. You're below baseline. Way below. That's withdrawal. That's why it feels so terrible. Your brain chemistry is fundamentally altered, and it takes time to readjust. This isn't weakness. This is biology. This is your brain doing exactly what brains do when exposed to these substances. Anyone's brain will respond this way. Doesn't matter how strong you are, how moral, how disciplined. The brain chemistry doesn't care about character. It just follows chemical laws. That medieval peasant didn't choose to become addicted. They chose to treat legitimate pain with the only effective medicine available. The addiction happened automatically, inevitably, because that's what opioids do to human brains when used regularly. Every time, no exceptions. If they'd known this, would they have made different choices? Maybe, maybe not. When you're in unbearable pain and someone offers relief, you take it, even if you know the risks, because the alternative is continuing to suffer. That's not an easy choice. That's an impossible choice. The difference now is that we have other options. We have non-addictive pain medications. Ibuprofen, acetaminophen. These aren't medieval herbs. These are synthesized compounds designed specifically to reduce pain without causing addiction. They're not perfect. They don't work for severe pain. But for everyday pain, tooth pain, minor injuries, they're enough. They work. And they don't trap you. We have dentistry, real dentistry, that infected tooth that started the whole nightmare. In modern times, you'd go to a dentist. They'd take an X-ray, prescribe antibiotics for the infection, extract the tooth under local anesthesia. The whole thing would be handled in a week. You'd take ibuprofen for the pain afterward. You'd be fine. That medieval peasant suffered for weeks with an infection that could have killed them. They needed strong medicine just to survive. We don't face that choice. We have better options. That's not something to take for granted. That's something to be genuinely grateful for. But here's the thing. Even with all our modern knowledge and better options, we're still facing an opioid crisis. Right now, today, in America, despite everything we know about addiction and brain chemistry and the dangers of opioids, people are dying. Lots of people. Let me tell you why. Because the parallels to the medieval story are striking, uncomfortable, almost exact in some ways. In the 1990s, pharmaceutical companies developed new opioid painkillers. OxyContin was the big one. They marketed these drugs aggressively to doctors, told them these were safe. Non-addictive pain management. Better, living through chemistry. Trust us. We're scientists. Doctors believed them. Why wouldn't they? These were major pharmaceutical companies with research and FDA approval. The drugs worked. They relieved pain remarkably well. Patients were grateful, so doctors prescribed them. Lots of them. For everything. Back pain, dental pain, surgery, recovery, chronic conditions. Just like medieval people going to herbalists for pain relief. Trusting the available authority. Believing what they were told about safety. And it worked. At first, people's pain was managed. They could function. They were grateful. Just like that medieval peasant in the first days after drinking Agnes's tea. But then tolerance developed. People needed higher doses. Doctors prescribed higher doses. The drugs were working. After all, patient satisfaction was high. Everything seemed fine. Until it wasn't. People started getting addicted. Needing the pills not for pain but to avoid withdrawal. Their prescriptions ran out. They couldn't get more through legitimate channels. So they turned to illegal sources. Street dealers. Heroin, which is just processed opium. The same substance medieval people used. Just refined. Then fentanyl entered the picture. Synthetic opioid 50 times stronger than heroin. Dealers cut it into street drugs to increase potency. But dosing is nearly impossible. Too much by a fraction and you stop breathing. People started dying. In huge numbers. The CDC estimates that over 500,000 Americans died from opioid overdoses between 1999 and 2019. 500,000. That's more than the entire population of some medieval cities. Gone. Dead from the same basic substance that killed that medieval peasant. Just delivered differently. The pattern is identical. Legitimate pain. Effective medicine. Trust in authorities. Progressive tolerance. Physical dependence. Inability to stop. Social destruction. Death. Medieval times. Modern times. Same trap. Different packaging. What's different now is that we have treatment options. Medication-assisted treatment. Methadone. Buprenorphine. These are opioids themselves but long-acting and controlled. They prevent withdrawal and cravings without causing a high. They let people stabilize. Let their lives recover while their brain chemistry slowly heals. We have therapy. Cognitive behavioral therapy. Support groups. Addiction counseling. People who understand addiction as disease. Not moral failure. Who can help you develop coping strategies? Who can support you through recovery? We have Narcan, naloxone, an opioid antagonist that reverses overdoses. If someone stops breathing from too much heroin or fentanyl, Narcan can bring them back. It saved tens of thousands of lives. Medieval people had nothing like this. If you took too much, you just died. We have understanding. At least more understanding than medieval times. We know addiction is a disease. We know treatment works. We know recovery is possible. That knowledge alone is revolutionary. It means hope exists. It means people trapped by substances aren't just moral failures waiting to die. They're sick people who can get better. But we haven't solved the problem. Not even close. We still have stigma. Massive stigma. People still judge addicts as weak, as making bad choices, as deserving their suffering. That medieval moralistic framework hasn't entirely gone away. It's just been updated with modern language. We still have inadequate treatment access. Medication-assisted treatment works, but many people can't afford it, don't have insurance that covers it, live in areas where it's not available. The treatment exists in theory, but not in practice for millions of people. We still have the war on drugs mentality, treating addiction as a crime rather than a medical condition. Arresting people, imprisoning them, making their lives worse in the name of punishment. The medieval church blamed sinners and offered no help. Modern criminal justice blames criminals and offers no help. Different words. Same abandonment. We still have people dying. Every day. From overdoses that could have been prevented. From lack of treatment. From shame that keeps them from seeking help. From a system that's supposed to help but often doesn't. The opioid crisis is medieval addiction with modern drugs. We have more knowledge, better options, but we're still failing people, still letting them die, still not doing enough. If you or someone you love is struggling with opioid addiction right now, here's what you need to know. It's not your fault. It's not a moral failing. It's not weakness. Your brain has been chemically altered by substances that alter brains. That's all. That's what happened. Treatment exists. It's not perfect. It's not always accessible. But it exists. Medication-assisted treatment works. Therapy works. Support groups work. Recovery is genuinely possible. People do it. Every day. People who were as trapped as that medieval peasant, who felt as hopeless, who couldn't imagine surviving. They recovered. They're living normal lives. You can too. The number to call in America is 1-800-662-4357. That's SAMHSA, the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration. They have a 24-hour helpline. They can connect you with treatment options in your area, with people who understand, who won't judge, who can help. If you're worried about someone else, the same number applies. You can get guidance on how to help, how to support them, how to navigate this impossible situation. You're not alone. They're not alone. Help exists. It's not easy. Recovery is hard. Really hard. But it's possible in ways it wasn't for medieval people. You have advantages they didn't. Medical understanding, treatment options, support systems. Use them. Please. For the rest of us, the ones not struggling with addiction but learning about it. What's the takeaway here? Compassion. That's the main thing. Compassion for people trapped by substances they often started using for legitimate reasons. Pain, injury, surgery, trauma. They weren't seeking to get high. They were seeking relief from suffering. And the medicine that relieved their suffering trapped them. That's not weakness. That's human vulnerability to powerful drugs that exploit how our brains work. It could happen to anyone. It has happened to people from every background, every class, every level of education. Addiction doesn't discriminate. Brains are brains. Understanding addiction as disease, not moral failure, changes everything. It means people deserve treatment, not judgment. Support, not abandonment. Medical help, not prison. That's the single most important lesson from comparing medieval times to now. Medieval people didn't understand what was happening to them. They blamed themselves. Society blamed them. The church blamed them. And they died without help, believing they deserved it, believing they were weak or sinful or cursed. We know better now. We understand the biology. We understand the brain chemistry. We understand that addiction is a medical condition requiring medical treatment. We have no excuse for treating it as anything else. And yet we often do. We often fall back into that medieval framework of blame and judgment. We need to do better. We have the knowledge. We need to use it. We need to extend compassion. We need to support treatment. We need to save lives instead of watching people die and shaking our heads about their poor choices. Let's talk about gratitude for a moment. Because if you're listening to this in modern America, you have so much to be grateful for. Things medieval people couldn't even imagine. You have pain management options that work without addiction. Over-the-counter medications that would seem like miracles to medieval people. Anti-inflammatories. Fever reducers. Headache medicine. Simple things. Available at any drugstore. Cheap. Effective. Safe. You have dentistry. You'll never die from an infected tooth. Never suffer for weeks because a cavity turned into an abscess. That particular nightmare is completely preventable now. You have antibiotics. Infections that killed medieval people in days are cured with a week of pills. That's revolutionary. That's life-saving. That's worth appreciating every single time you take them. You have understanding of addiction. You know it's a disease. You know it's treatable. You know recovery is possible. That knowledge alone is powerful. It means hope. It means people don't have to suffer in shame and ignorance. You have treatment options. Not perfect. Not universally accessible. But they exist. Medication-assisted treatment. Therapy. Support groups. Medical supervision. Narcan for emergencies. Things that save lives every day. Be grateful for these things. Really. Genuinely grateful. Not in an abstract way. In a concrete, visceral way. Because the alternative is that medieval nightmare. Pain without relief. Addiction without understanding. Suffering without help. Death without dignity. We've come so far. We still have so far to go. But we've made progress. Real. Meaningful progress. That's worth acknowledging. Now, let's come back to sleep. That's why you're here. After all, learning this difficult history, understanding this uncomfortable truth, and then letting it settle into peaceful rest. The medieval peasant is at peace now. Their suffering is over. Gone for centuries. Their story has been told. Their experience has been honored. They're not forgotten. Not tonight. Tonight, we remembered them. We learned from them. We carried forward their hard-won wisdom. And you, lying in your bed, in your modern home, with your modern medicine and modern understanding, you're safe. You're comfortable. You're not in medieval England facing impossible choices about pain management with substances you don't understand. You're here. You're now. You're okay. If this story brought up difficult feelings, that's normal. It's a heavy topic. Addiction, suffering, death. These aren't easy things to contemplate. But sometimes we need to look at difficult truths. To understand them, to learn from them, to become more compassionate people because of them. And now you can let it go. Let the story fade. Let the medieval village fade. Let the suffering fade into history where it belongs. You've learned what you needed to learn. You've understood what you needed to understand. Now you can rest. Think about the good things, the medical advances, the treatment options, the understanding, the hope. Think about how lucky we are to live now instead of then. How many problems we've solved. How many lives we've saved. How much progress we've made. Be grateful for simple things. For ibuprofen that treats headaches without addiction. For dentists who fix teeth without agony. For antibiotics that cure infections. For the knowledge that addiction is disease. For the treatments that exist. For the hope that remains. And be compassionate. For people struggling with addiction now. For the medieval people who struggled before. For yourself and your own vulnerabilities. For the human condition that includes pain and suffering and the desperate search for relief. Compassion makes the world better. Understanding makes the world better. You learned something tonight. You grew in empathy. You became a more understanding person. That matters. That makes a difference. Sleep now. Let your mind rest. Let your body relax. Let the story settle into your memory where it will inform how you see the world, how you treat people, how you understand suffering. The medieval peasant would want you to sleep peacefully, to appreciate your modern comforts, to be grateful for what you have, to extend compassion to others, to learn from their mistakes and their suffering, to be wiser and kinder because of their story. And they would want you to know that if you're ever in pain, you have options they didn't. You can get help that actually helps. You can be treated with dignity and understanding. You can recover in ways they never could. That's their gift to you across the centuries. Their suffering wasn't meaningless. It taught us, it showed us what doesn't work, what we need to do differently, what we need to understand better. Their story matters. Their experience matters. They matter. And so do you. Your comfort matters. Your peace matters. Your rest matters. So sleep now. Deep, peaceful sleep, knowing that you live in better times, knowing that help exists, knowing that understanding is possible, knowing that compassion makes everything better. The story is over. The lesson is learned. The history is told. Now comes the rest. The gentle drift into sleep. The quiet peace of a mind at rest. Thank you for listening to this difficult story. Thank you for caring enough to learn. Thank you for extending your compassion backward through time to people who suffered without understanding why. If you found this valuable, subscribe for more forgotten history, more difficult truths, more lessons from the past that inform the present. Comment where you're watching from. Let me know what you learned. Let me know if this changed how you think about addiction. And if you're struggling, if this story hit too close to home, please reach out for help. 1-800-662-4357. SAMHSA. They can help. Treatment exists. Recovery is possible. You don't have to suffer like medieval people did. You have options. Use them. For everyone else, sleep well, rest peacefully, dream of better times, of progress and understanding, of compassion and hope, of medical advances and human kindness, of all the ways we've learned to be better, to help more, to understand more deeply. The medieval world was dark in so many ways, but we've brought light, we've brought knowledge, we've brought hope. That's worth celebrating even as we acknowledge how far we still have to go. Sleep now. The story is complete. The lesson is learned. The night is peaceful. You're safe. You're comfortable. You're here in the present where things are better than they were, where things can continue to improve, where understanding grows and compassion spreads and help becomes more available. The medieval peasant rests. So should you? In peace, in comfort, in the quiet confidence that comes from learning difficult truths and choosing compassion anyway. Good night. Sleep well. Thank you for being here, for listening, for caring, for learning, for growing and understanding, for becoming more compassionate. The world needs that. Now more than ever, your compassion matters. Your understanding matters. You matter. Rest now. Deep, peaceful, grateful rest. The story is told. The lesson is learned. The sleep is earned. Good night.